A squad of soldiers noticed that the enemies have disappeared somewhere and decided to explore their bunker, unsuspecting that an ancient evil lives there.
What in God?
A group of soldiers consisting of Lewis, Gray, and Voker sit in a trench, listening to songs and picking out lice while drinking alcohol. Their musings are interrupted by Lieutenant Turnit, who chases Lewis off to watch. Capital Hal brings in a new addition to the squad in the form of Medic Seeger and a young gunner who just turned 18. Gray jokingly says they'll be sending in high school kids soon. Just one bomb blast makes Baker's pants heavier. Gray thought that wasn't enough and started telling a story about ancient tunnels where scary spirits roam. Who knows? Maybe there's a tunnel right underneath them. Standing at his post, Lewis notices something strange. The Germans have decided to retreat from their positions. Parent orders a mortar to be fired. He calls it incredible luck. Now they have a chance to cross the neutral line this night. He then explains to his subordinates their next steps. There are bodies of Germans lying everywhere, as suddenly one of them comes to life and asks for help. But the soldiers don't want to listen to him and just eliminate him. Rambling through the dugout, they notice the entrance to the bunker, but it's blocked from the outside for some reason. Tarrant gives the order to open the door. It's pitch darkness down below, with only a couple of lighters to illuminate it. They miraculously manage to spot some traps the Germans have set near the entrance. After a couple of minutes, Tarrant stumbles upon the light switch. All the soldiers are instantly speechless because there is a German hanging in the middle of the room. He's still alive, so Sigurd tries to save his life so he can tell them what happened. As they talk, Voker notices claw marks. The closer they get to the exit, the more distinctly they hear a loud whistling. It's the Germans who decided to destroy the trenches along with the entrance to the bunker. One of the shells pierces the ground and begins to spread poisonous gas. The soldiers scramble to find gas masks. Voker is pelted with rocks because of the cave-in. Lewis tries to help his comrade, but to no avail. Seeger sees the strange bars but does not pay attention to them. Tarrant interrogates the German, but he says nothing. At the same time, Lewis is trying to contact the Allies, and Voker has become schizophrenic. It seems to him that his whole body is enveloped in lice, and he decides to do a full-blown cleansing. Lewis manages to contact the man, but Voker's strange behavior distracts him. The private calls for help. At this time, Baker decides to check the dark passage. There were bodies of Germans lying everywhere. Seeger thinks it's a mass grave, but as soon as they leave, one of the Germans opens his eyes. All subsequent attempts to contact the men come to nothing. He keeps saying that this line was answered. However, Tarrant asks the private to rest. He wants healthy people, not crazy ones. Voker gets even worse, and a balloon starts to grow on his neck. After a couple minutes, Voker goes on the attack, wounding Lewis. Just as suddenly, something bursts out of his mouth, and Voker dies, just like the something out of his mouth. The same person is heard on the radio. Seeger transmits the coordinates for the rescue. The man starts asking strange questions and calls the surviving German a priority target. Tarrant tries to understand what makes the Germans so important, but nothing is answered. Lieutenant Tarrant believes that Voker's blurring is due to a severe concussion. Seeger says he was able to contact the Allies. Turner's mind goes into overdrive, and he starts reprimanding Seeger for using the radio without a direct order. None of them have to think, just follow orders. The German knows English after all, and gives his name as Kurt. Seeger wonders if Kurt saw what Voker regurgitated. Maybe there was something similar with those who crucified him. Kurt replies that people drive themselves into mental problems, and maybe there's a devil among them. Lewis and Baker are counting supplies. Lewis remembers the story about evil spirits and is sure that this is a test of faith. The baker accidentally drops the jar and the slurry pours out of it. Lewis opens the other jars, which are just as rotten, while in a dark corner someone starts to move. Tarrant thinks the supplies were destroyed by a German or Seeger. Lewis has to make sure that Seeger doesn't go near the radio again. Suddenly he goes over to the German side. With all their free time, the soldiers are trying to dig a passage out. Lewis is reciting prayers while stroking something. Seeger hears a muffled thud and heads out to find the source. The sound comes from a dark pit. Just as suddenly, the corridor is illuminated with a blue light, and Seeger moves to the grave. 3 shoots sprout from the ground, but a loud sound moves Seeger back to the real world. Lieutenant Tarrant has finally lost his mind and accuses the medic of saving the German on purpose to kill his comrades in the future. Lewis asks him to stop before it's too late. When the lieutenant has left, Seeger removes the bayonets from his rifles and gives them to the soldiers, including the German. A clear liquid begins to drip from the ceiling. A little later, Lewis manages to contact the man again. According to them, their platoon is in a firefight with the Germans, because of which the rescue will take a bit longer. Lewis doesn't know how long they can survive. The man explains that persuasion will help them survive in any situation, and Lewis has a lot of conviction. His companions are in a lot of agony. The sheep have broken away from the flock. Lewis will have to become a light and lead them to salvation. Meanwhile, Tarrant is sharpening his bayonet, and new life appears in the mass grave. As he walks through the corridors, the Sigurus notices strange white roots that weren't there before, and also a copper wire, but he says nothing to his comrades. The lieutenant has gone completely insane. He is sure that as soon as they manage to get out of the bunker, they will be attacked by the Germans. But before that happens, they need to gather all their weapons, and most importantly, not to be seen by the other soldiers. The trio has been digging a passage all day and decided to rest a little. Seeger cheers up his comrades. Baker thinks that since Lewis and the lieutenant have gone crazy, maybe they'll be next. Lewis interrupts their conversation and asks them to approach the lieutenant. Terrence pointedly sticks his bayonet into the ground. He calls everyone brothers in arms, but every minute there is less and less air. Provisions and water are gone. There's no telling if they'll be able to wait for help, but now that they are, under Terrence's direct command, he gives the order to lay down all weapons. Seagat gives up his bayonet and asks his comrades to do the same. Then the lieutenant goes on to talk about the enemies that await them on the surface. From now on, the German will be under his personal watch. A little later, Lewis decides to get some sleep and doesn't notice his mug filling up with a white liquid. When he wakes up, he is overcome by an intense thirst and drinks the deliciousness in a volley. Seagat dug down to the white roots. Among them was a small locket. Suddenly, the passage collapsed, but Seagat managed to escape. By this time, Lewis had activated a grenade and taken Tarrant hostage. Baker leisurely lifts the pin and tries to disarm the grenade. It was a big mistake that cost him his arm. Tarrant, on the other hand, was completely unharmed. As Seagat approached the radio, a man greeted him. He explains that help will not come unless they guarantee the safety of the prisoner. Seagat doesn't understand what this has to do with the German, but the man doesn't want to answer. It's classified information. Kurt shoots the box and a white slurry pours out. The wires lead into the ground and consist of white roots. Seagat asks Kurt to explain what it is. The German has to explain that he works for an angel of war. He only exists in conflict. Conflict is like food to him. Seagat asks how to stop him. The answer is simple. There's no way. While they were talking, Tarrant bathed in a white slurry. Seagat tries to explain that they can't fight. However, the lieutenant has finally lost his mind and shoots Kurt. Baker tries to help, but it's nearly impossible with one arm. Seagat loses it too and takes several wounds. Out of his last strength, Baker pulls the trigger and kills the lieutenant. The German asks not to be rescued. This place must be destroyed along with him. The duo notices light coming through from the grates. They climb along the pipe and make their way out onto the field, where a battle is going on right now. The other soldiers carry Baker away, and Seagat returns to the bunker to rescue the German. While he was lying on the surface, the bunker was enveloped by white roots, and a glowing eye appeared in the German's place. Seagat moves to the still young Kurt. The boy walks into the structure, and a hand appears out of it. A monster appears in the darkness. Seagat grabs a shovel and stabs the monster, but it feels no pain at all and slowly approaches the Seagat. It crawls towards the copper wire connecting the mine. The monster grabs his legs and roots begin to penetrate his body. The Seagat immediately activates the trap and spreads flames throughout the bunker. That concludes the movie. I'll see you very soon. Bye.